All right, good morning, guys. I believe this is lesson number 8, I think now. It's hard to keep track anymore. All right, so you guys should have finished with your do now. In your own words, explain what observer bias is and how someone might see/experience it in their day-to-day lives. So once again, the whole idea of essentially seeing what we want to see. Things that really support our own conclusions. We tend to look at the things we want and try to push aside or just kind of ignore what we don't want to see. And so, even though this may make us happy or this may make us, satisfied, at the end of the day, it's not really conclusive evidence. It's not really, good research. We're just focusing on the good stuff as opposed to the bad stuff as well. We don't recognize our own shortcomings. We don't recognize our own biases, our own, flaws and whatnot. Then it can't really be complete or credible research. And so at the end of the day, all effort's basically wasted because what information you came up with is just about as useless as just somebody randomly off the street saying, hey, I have this opinion on this matter. So make sure you have 4 sentences and get it turned in. Today we're going to shift gears just a little bit. We've talked about the research process. We've talked about starting to diagnose certain situations and trying to pick them apart. So now we're going to move ahead a little bit. We're going to pretend like, okay, we've done all the research, we've gotten everything, we've presented our argument, and now we're moving on essentially to the persuasion aspect of it. So I can have all the best information in the world, I can have all my ducks in a row, everything laid out, but at the end of the day, being able to convince somebody that what I'm saying is true and accurate, especially if they have opposing beliefs, can be quite tricky. And so we're going to explore that just a little bit today. First term we're going to cover is something called the central route of persuasion. Central route of persuasion. This is essentially when a person is persuaded by the content of the message as opposed to really anything else. So this is when I'm persuading somebody, I'm getting them on my side, I'm convincing them solely based on the information I presented, solely based on my numbers, my data, my research, my statistics. So their opinion is swayed solely by my message, exactly what I'm saying. And so usually I get a few people say, well, shouldn't that be the only way of persuading somebody? Shouldn't that be the only methodology for doing so? Shouldn't people only pay attention to the evidence, what's credible? The immediate answer is yes, they should. However, when it comes to convincing people who have emotions, feelings, histories, or whatever in their own functioning brain, it's not always the case. So I'm going to step aside for just a second, make sure you guys can get that written down, and go ahead and press pause and go ahead and click the link for the first YouTube video, and we'll move on in just a second. All right, so you have the central route of persuasion, and then you have something called the peripheral route of persuasion. Peripheral. So essentially 2 different ways, 2 conflicting ways to get somebody on your side. So this is when a person is persuaded by something other than the content of the message. So essentially everything besides the first one. And so when it comes to things other than the content of the message, once again, the first thought is like, well, what's left? If it's not about what you actually presented in your research or your findings, then what else is there? So some people can be persuaded simply by the speaker's credibility. It's a terrible P. So before a person even begins speaking or before they even really present their information, whether or not it's good, some people might be persuaded by, oh, I know that person. They have a great reputation. They're always, legit. They're always very straightforward. I like this person, so I'm just going to listen and automatically believe whatever they say. Not based on any of their findings, which could be completely wrong, but simply because of the speaker's, past history, what their credentials are. Oh, this person has doctor in front of their name. Oh, this person has this kind of experience. And so they must be correct, regardless of what is on their paper. Another thing is the attractiveness of the speaker. And yes, it can include physical attractiveness, but in this case, it can include that, but it's also how they present the information. Is the person very out there? Is he very in your face? Is he very, does he sound like he knows what he's talking about? I could be sitting up here, spouting complete BS, giving you all wrong definitions, but because I'm saying it confidently, chances are you're going to believe me. And chances are, and you see this all the time, oh, so-and-so said this, so it's got to be true. Oh, they spoke, they knew what they're talking about, it sounds like they got a plan, they're ready to go, they're very motivating, so I'm going to believe them, regardless of the content, regardless of the actual information. And so, because this is a much easier route to take, oh, I'm going to believe them because they sound like they know what they're talking about, it unfortunately gives people this weird permission to not look at the information for themselves, for them not to do the research on their own. Once again, why? A lot of the times just because it's easier to do. Oh, it takes time, effort, and energy to actually look at it for myself, and it takes a bit of intelligence to understand what they're talking about. But no, they're saying it confidently, they look good, they know what they're talking about, their hair's nice, whatever, I'm going to believe them. Unfortunately, more and more, you see this around, say, election time, or you see this around, public speaking and whatnot. They're very engaging, they're very outgoing. They're very, they try to be people person, people, whatever. You get the point. And so, you end up having these two kind of coming in conflict with each other. Yes, it should always be the central route of persuasion. It should always go by the content, but unfortunately, it's not the reality we live in. And unfortunately, people have their own feelings, emotions, and whatnot. They get tied up in the whole process. So more often than not, people lean more towards the peripheral route of persuasion. So, last thing we're going to cover for the day is actually something we touched on before. But I don't think we've actually recorded in our notes yet, so we're going to go ahead and do that today. The term is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance. Individuals' psychological discomfort caused by inconsistent thoughts. So, an individual's psychological discomfort or dissonance caused by inconsistent thoughts. So, what does this mean in layman's terms? So, this is like if I had this very strongly held belief for a very long time. Like, I've always been told that all birds are blue, no matter what. All birds are blue. And then one day when I'm 25, I suddenly see a bird that's red. And so cognitive dissonance is that kind of like unsettling feeling, that kind of, no, it's almost like borderline denial. It's like, no, I can't see what I'm seeing. No, that's not true. That's wrong. And it's that feeling that, hey, everything I know has been essentially turned on itself. Another example might be, if anybody is still, heavily believing in Santa Claus, do me a favor, just cover your ears. I don't want to ruin your lives. Give you a second. It's almost like that feeling when you find out or you're told that Santa Claus is not real for the first time. It's kind of that, oh, I've been told he's real, it's been reinforced, I've left out milk and cookies, this, that, and the other, and all of a sudden I find out that it's all not true. It's just not a thing. And so it's kind of that feeling, that mental, like that kind of unsettling, pit your stomach kind of feeling that just, feels bad. And so that's from a childish a slightly childish perspective, but translate that into a much more, extreme matter in adulthood. And the older you get, and the longer certain ideas or thoughts are reinforced, meaning, okay, I keep pounding in your head, this is right, this is right, this is right, this is correct, this is correct, this is correct. That day, when you suddenly find out that it's not correct, and it's flipped on itself, and you are suddenly presented with, hey, this has been wrong the entire time, it's, like I said, your first reaction is almost denial. No, that can't be true. I'm seeing things, that's wrong. And so it's that conflict between what I think I know and what actually is, if that makes sense. So, once again, central route of persuasion versus the peripheral route of persuasion, one arguing for the content of the message and one more so for the showmanship of the message, how confident they are, how zealous they are, what have you. Then cognitive dissonance, that kind of mental discomfort caused by inconsistent thoughts. Two things in conflict with one another. Oh, this seems right, but this seems right. They can't both be right. All right, so I'll step out of the way. If you guys just like to write those down, you press pause, go ahead. And also, go ahead if you haven't already, play that second YouTube clip, and then we'll move on to the exit slip. All right, you guys, exit slip for the day. In your own words, explain a time where you or someone you know experienced cognitive dissonance. What was the situation, and how did you or that person react to it? So one more time. In your own words, explain a time where you or someone you know experienced cognitive dissonance. What was the situation, and how did you or they react to it? So make sure you have 4 sentences, get everything turned in. I'll see you guys for the next lesson.